The Anglican Church is at a crossroads. For more than a decade, we have been debating many issues regarding human sexuality. Here at St Andrew's Epsom, a group of young adults have created 3 short films to help us as we continue with these discussions. These films were made by interviewing a number of different Anglicans and asking them different questions relating to human sexuality. Their responses are given honestly. They are based on scripture, tradition, reason and experience. Those who participated in this film have done so willingly in the hope that by sharing honestly their heartfelt views, others may be encouraged to do the same. On the 13th of August 2013, New Zealand became the 13th country in the world to recognise marriage equality. For the first time in our history, the legal definition of marriage has come to mean something different to the Church's traditional understanding of marriage. Given this change, it's timely that we think about what marriage means for us as Christians.
Are you married?
Yes, I've been married for 30 years, in fact.
I'm getting married in January of next year, which is very exciting.
I've been married more than 50 years.
No, I'm not married.
Do you want to get married someday?
Someday, yeah, hope to. When I meet the right person.
Yes, I am married. Yeah.
Why did you get married?
Fell in love. Yeah, I met the right guy. Yeah. We've been married for 18 years.
1976. 39 years. Lynn and I have been married 39 years.
Yes, I am married. In fact, tomorrow is our 12th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of fun to be here today.
Yeah.
I think commitment, probably number one, cooperation, and consideration for the wants and needs of the other partner.
It's about journeying together with one person. It's about, for me, making decisions together, so it's not feeling like, I'm holding the whole world, but actually sharing that with somebody. And it's about working through the hard stuff as well. So life is not always easy, and being able to be there for each other is really important.
You've got to also be prepared to put up with the good and the bad, because I think sometimes marriage is depicted as some kind of ideal state. It's like when people walk up the aisle, well, that's it, it's happily ever after. Well, actually, it isn't, because you share very, very good times, but you can also have times which are quite trying and difficult. And I think for people to be, for partners in a marriage, husband and wife, partners, whatever, to be tolerant of that, I think, is an understanding in those situations is incredibly important too.
One of our bishops once reminded me, we are sexual beings, so part of our fulfillment as human beings is to have a right place to explore our sexuality, and that needs mutual respect. Right place to order the lives of our children. It all depends on that respectful relationship. So I think I would probably say that would be my key thing. There's a lot of other things that go in and out of a relationship. There are times when you're ill and life is quite different from when you're healthy. But if you have that mutual respect, you go through those periods of time and come out better for it the other side.
A deep sense of trust in the other person, and that this person wants the best for you. Even though you know each other's kind of roughest edges, there's a sense of just giving each other space to grow into the best person you can be.
Did you get married in a church?
Yes, we did. We did get married in church. married at St. Mark's Church, which had a kind of connection for us. It's really funny we didn't get married in my church, because my church was too small. So we were surrounded by family and friends and a good community of people from our kind of our congregations. Yeah, it was important for us to, I mean, it's who we are, I think, as a family. We are church people. Church has significance for us because it reminds us again who we are, what our connection is, where we stand in the world, how we view the world, how we view each other. So it was, and it's also a place of celebration. So yeah, we did get married in church. It was a great day. It was a wonderful day.
Well, both Michael and I were really involved in youth ministry in Waikato, and that obviously was a Christian response in the sense of wanting to express our love for one another and our commitment to one another in a church. There was a family expectation. My mother and my grandmother had got married in the cathedral, but also we had a relationship with the bishop at the time who married us, and so we were also Christian and wanted to express our love for one another before God.
No, I'm not getting married in a church for a couple of reasons. The first reason is for me that a church is not about the building, so I still want to get married by a priest, but I don't feel that I need to do that in a church. I want my family and friends to be there, and for me it's about community and celebrating with people who love and support me and us, so that's really important to me. The second reason is that at the moment there are some issues with the church not allowing same-gender couples to get married, and I feel quite strongly that why should I be allowed to get married in a church but people who are in just as loving, just as supportive relationships are not allowed to.
My partner and I are in a civil union, and we had that conducted in an Anglican church but not by an Anglican priest. And I guess to a certain extent that we consider ourselves married, and we're happy with that status as long as the position of the Anglican Church is the one that it is. If it had been a choice on the table, do you want a civil union or do you want a marriage, we would of course have chosen a marriage. But we feel quite strongly that at the moment we had our civil union exactly as we wanted to have it. And we're prepared to wait to see if the church wants to accept and bless marriages in church by ordained clergy. And I guess if that is clearly not going to happen, we might rethink, but at the moment we're pretty happy with our civil union and the way we did it.
We'd met in the church, and that was our community, our kind of, so we got to know each other in that context over the course of several years. So it just felt absolutely right to get married amongst that community and with those people. Yeah.
40 years ago, that's what most people that I knew did. For me, I suppose I should say today, it's been wonderful for me to have my children be married in a church, because for me, it was less so important for me in times gone by, well, when I got married, but I think it's important now that God is acknowledged in a marriage, and that the people getting married can feel that their marriage is blessed by God.
To be honest, I'm not sure if I would get married in a church. I think that it is a symbol of faith, and that's really important for a lot of people. But I think that it would depend again on what my partner felt comfortable with and what I felt comfortable with. I do find that it's a bit upsetting that a lot of people can't get married in a church, and that makes me feel, why do I get this privilege just because I'm heterosexual? It doesn't, that's not something that I'm actually very comfortable with, that some people are excluded and others aren't. I don't think that's a really positive thing. So it would depend on how the church was going at the time when I didn't want to get married, and what everyone kind of thought, and again what my partner was comfortable with.
We were married in the church because we never thought of being married anywhere else. The only alternative at the time was to be married in a registry office, so it was just very narrowly a legal transaction. And, well, how incredibly narrow and boring that is. When for us it was about having family and friends there. It was about the commitments we were making to each other before God. It was about a beautiful Episcopal church that we both felt very at home in, with the liturgy, with the music. And it just was absolutely the right thing to do. And so one of the things that pains me terribly is that we, as the church, are denying people who are deeply in love and want to make that commitment. We're denying them that same thing.
We did get married in the church, and I think one of the reasons that we did was that, I mean, both of us had been, Tiffany and I had been brought up in different ways in different times, having attended church. At the time we were married, we weren't necessarily. And it's interesting really, because as the years have gone on, I think both of us have thought a lot more about all of that. And I've come to the realisation that you've got to find ways of thinking about things and defining things and understanding things. And I think that while knowledge on earth, while science takes us a long way to doing that, it doesn't take us the whole way. And so I think that belief in God is something which I find very special now.
Well, faith is going to be different for every couple. In our case, our faith means that we have to offer ourselves as authentically to each other and to God. And that is where I think faith is the element that binds us together to a certain extent and keeps us together.
I think faith fits into a marriage in a similar way to how it fits into other components of our everyday life. It is always there with us in the marriage, whether both parties are religious or not. The fact that one person is going on a faith journey has a huge impact on the relationship, on the marriage, and how they perceive things and how they react.
Well, for us it's been really important because we are both committed to our relationship with God and our relationship with one another, our relationship to the church and to wider friends. And I think if God is love, then what we experience through those relationships is part of our faith journey. I think it's also about worshipping together, praying together, doing theology together, which we do a lot. Over the dining room table, we often talk about all sorts of things, and our daughter, who's 15, is part of that. So our faith is very much part of who we are as a couple and who we are as individuals.
Faith is an important part of any marriage in various ways. I mean, whether you're talking about faith in terms of your religious faith, or whether you're talking about it in terms of your ability and your willingness actually to understand things and to forgive things. You know, it never ceases to amaze me that we often talk about forgiveness and tolerance and understanding, and yet it saddens me that so many people who actually claim to be quite religious are intolerant. They don't appear to want to understand the way others do and think, and I think faith has something to do with that. So I think it's probably in any marriage it's a significant part of the day-to-day life that people lead.
Marriages, however good they are not always easy. That's the hard part of marriage. But also, even if you look at the tremendous upside of marriage, the great companionship and all the rest, faith brings a real extra dimension, a real sense of something outside of ourselves in that marriage that helps us through that marriage. Now, you could have a very good marriage that did not have some religious faith underpinning it. Many people do have marriages like that. But speaking for myself personally, that great sense of the extraordinary mystery of God and faith and of the Holy Spirit elevates and brings an enormity, sort of our small relationship in an enormous context that I think would shrink if ours was still a good marriage, but one which did not have that faith base.
I suppose for me, God is love. And so God is there in a marriage because God is love.
I think the church should respond to the change of legal marriage as to understand what lies behind that. Because yes, it is, crucially, it's about society acknowledging that two people, regardless of their gender, are very committed to each other and have the absolute right to have that recognised by society as a whole, by marriage. And I think if the church comes at it that way and then asks itself, and indeed people in the church, ask themselves, how does that then relate to my faith, our worship, our theology? And when you start to look at it that way, I think you do understand that marriage as we know it today has already changed very considerably down through the last 2,000 years. And what has been constant, though, through that changing understanding of marriage has been about the respect of people in a relationship, acknowledging the love and commitment people make in that relationship to each other. And that would be a great constant. As I understand the gospel, those are really powerful gospel imperatives to me. And so marriage as we understand it now today in a legal sense, to me is absolutely compatible with those gospel imperatives.
The difficulty is with the canon laws of the church and those who are involved in changing those. And to a certain extent, I think that they are being very pastoral in making sure that changes are not made that many people in the church would be so uncomfortable with that they couldn't remain Anglicans. So I respect that process, but I would say it is difficult for people like me. I was part of discussions before the actual law changed that enabled same-sex couples to have a marriage. And clearly in that group there were those who would be opposed and continue to be opposed. And I think the church needs to have a place for those people, and also to have a place for those congregations that do want to celebrate same-sex marriages in the same way as, quite appropriately, they are celebrating opposite-sex marriages. So I think the church needs to change, and in fact the church has changed, because many congregations, many ministry units are celebrating the lives of same-sex married couples.
To think that there are people in New Zealand that could be going to churches where they aren't accepted in a church, but they're accepted outside of a church, seems a little counterproductive in terms of acknowledging who it is that is in your church and who it is that is worshipping in your church. In my mind, churches should be a place of inclusion, not exclusion.
The evidence is that if marriage per se is supported and encouraged in our communities, whether it's straight people or gay people, lesbian people getting married, it benefits the whole community. Everybody benefits. Children benefit. They have solid families to be raised in. So, yeah, I would say let's move on. Let's kind of join the parade. I mean, there's so many people. It's around the world. This is progressing in a remarkable fashion, and we need to be supportive and encouraging rather than trying to hold people back.
I don't think the church necessarily does need to respond to society. I don't think it should reflect it. I think the church should have changed its stance on marriage long ago simply because it was the right thing to do. I think that when you're trying to copy society, it's almost a backstep. Like, society and church shouldn't be one and the same. The church should be acting out of what's best for itself and for the people, which is what the church should really be about. So the fact that society has taken a step forward, I think, is indicative of times needing to change across the board. But as far as the church is involved, the church should have made the move long ago, because really, when you're trying to say that you're doing the right thing and your path's the right way, like, you can't really say that when you're pushing down a minority, if you get what I mean. So, yeah, that's my answer.
I think the church should respond positively to the legal definition of marriage being changed. And the reason I say that is because I think if we're truly a church that is promoting love and commitment and healthy and holistic relationships, then we need to live that. And I think that is what marriage is about. I also think that marriage has changed over centuries. I'm a feminist theologian, and I've done a lot of work in terms of gender equality and gender relationships. And certainly the early church, the women were not in an equal relationship with the men. And the understanding of marriage was very different. It wasn't just about mutual love. There was a whole kind of power and status and handing over in terms of a chattel, if you like, for the women. So for me, the church needs to continue to reevaluate the definition of marriage and to honour the relationships around that. So for us, our role is to continue to ask the big questions and particularly model and articulate what God's love is for us right now.
I'm very saddened and disappointed that the church on this issue has fallen behind the community. The community as a whole has come to recognise the diversity of people's makeup, and the church hasn't been able to do that, and I think it's exclusive and harmful to the image of the church.
I think that the church should respond, obviously. I think that they need to be encompassing of all people, whether they are in same-sex relationships or heterosexual relationships. I think that everyone needs to be accepted in the church, so I think the church should respond by listening to society and listening to what everyone is saying and saying, no, we need to change this.
I think the church should be working at a broader understanding of marriage that's more inclusive. Yeah, I feel that very strongly.
I think there are there've generally been two kind of schools of thought around this. And one is that people choose to be gay as some kind of lifestyle choice. And I came to realise how ridiculous that position was many years ago, when a person I know very well and is gay actually said to me, can you tell me the day that you woke up and decided you were going to be heterosexual? And of course that's a nonsense. I didn't, and no one does. It's part of who you are. So if you move on from that, and if we assume that, and I think the evidence is quite compelling, that being gay is somehow wired into us, as being heterosexual is somehow wired into us, then it's who we are. It's just an important part of us. And so if organisations, the church included, start discriminating against people on the basis of who they are, I think they're on very shaky moral ground, because then it's not a great deal different from discriminating against somebody because they're black, or because they're Muslim, or because they're women. And so my view is that it is a very good thing that the law was changed. I think it's forward-looking of New Zealand really to have done that. And I admire the legislators who have done that, because very often they'll back away from quite difficult issues like that. But apart from the legal reasons, my view is that the church should respond accordingly. I mean, they should embrace that, as opposed to being suspicious or thinking it somehow problematic.
And I feel sad that it wasn't the church leading the way, that it was the state leading the way. So obviously I feel that the church should reflect what society is saying, that marriage between same-sex marriage is about love. And that's the issue for me.